DEBx, amplifying voices, accelerating change.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage the founder of DEBx, Shapiro.
I grew up in what I call the Beaver household. For those of you who might not be familiar with that reference, I'm referring to an old TV show from back in 1957 called Leave It to Beaver. It was a show that was billed as a sitcom that defined, and I quote, the golly gee wholesomeness of the 1950s and 60s television, where Dad, Ward Cleaver, always gets home in time for dinner. Mom, June, cleans the house while wearing a dress and pearls, and the kids, Wally and Beaver, always learn a lesson at the end of the episode. Well, who needs Game of Thrones when you have exciting television like that? While it might have been a rather bland show, it really is the show that best depicts the family that I grew up in. My mom and dad are happily married. I have an older brother who, like Wally, could do no wrong. And I was like the younger, more menacing one like the Beaver. My mom was more like June and would stay home, and her role, as far as I was concerned, was to spend every single day when I came home from school listening to me recount the entire day to my mom. We used to joke around and we would say that it would take longer for me to tell the day than the day actually took. But she listened intently, as if I were telling stories about magical lands and great times. I always had a home where my voice was heard. I thought that this was the norm, but as I grew up, I realized that this safe, loving, accepting household was anything but the norm. Not all kids had parents that brought them home and sat and talked to them all day. Or people didn't have families to have dinner with when Dad came home, if Dad even came home at all. I thought that my family was the norm, but I was very wrong. And it broke my heart to know that there weren't others out there who were having their voices be heard. So in 2017, when I created DEBx, our mission was that all voices are heard. And by the end of this evening, we are going to have 66 speakers who have graced the DEBx stage. I am very proud, but it just skims the surface of the 7 billion people that there are out there to reach. But it is a start. But for each one of the voices who are heard on this stage, there are 500 of you hearing these messages and hopefully sharing these messages. The ripple effect we may never know. The impact of our voices we may never know. In DEBx4, one of our speakers gained the courage to share her own very personal story about how, as a young girl, she had been sexually abused and had been carrying a victim mentality around in her life until just recently, when she discovered that she could release her past and live a powerful life. At the end of that show, a woman in her mid-60s came up to her and said, "May I have my picture with you?" The speaker said, "Of course, but may I ask why?" And the woman responded, "Because I, like you, had been abused as a young girl, and I have been carrying that around in my life since then. After seeing your talk, I know that I can release that, and I'm giving that up today. And I want a picture to commemorate this date." But we never know the impact that we make. Last month, we launched a one-day pilot of DEBx Teen. We started the day at 10 a.m., and by 2:30, these young teens were delivering their talks to their families. A little bit different than the adults, apparently. One of the teens delivered her first draft of a magnificent talk. And when I asked the other teens what was the message that they heard, did they hear something that shifted their life for themselves? The 11-year-old's arm shot up and she said, "I have a new view." And when asked what that view was, she said, "I got from her talk that I am perfect, just the way that I am." 4 hours in a class, 5 minutes in a talk, and a young girl is walking out knowing herself as a completely different person. We will never know the impact we make. But I'd like to have the record be straight. Mom, Dad, this is your impact. This is your legacy. It was your love. It was your willingness to have my voice be heard that made this all possible. So tonight, I would like to dedicate this show to you. So, I think you came here, though, to see somebody else speak outside of myself. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce now to you the 2019 May DEBx speakers.